carbon offsets as a sort of way of buying your way out of bad behavior is a scam. So I think there's only one real cryptocurrency. I think we're sitting now at nearly 100,000 musicians who are on there from around the world, delivering to maybe like 40 million fans. But that's it's always been our mission, not to make Ed Sheeran more money, but to enable more musicians to earn a living wage. Because if we can do that, then they can stop stacking shelves in an evening and focus on their craft.
You mentioned the word metaverse there a lot, and I wondered what do you say to kind of general public who seem to have a very negative view of it, or a view that it's kind of way unrealistic, like millions of years into the future, like why bother thinking about it now? What do you say to them?
Irfon Watkins has founded numerous businesses, one of which has even gone on to raise over 20 million in funding, opening offices in both New York and San Francisco. In this podcast, we specifically discuss his blockchain projects. One is a successful tokenized carbon marketplace that all started with Jaguar the car maker, and the other is an all-in-one platform for musicians that is trying to revolutionize the way that they can make a living. On top of digging into these two fascinating stories, we will be talking about the lessons he's learned the most from his many years of experience, and what specific advice he has for blockchain builders during the bear market like the one we are currently in.
Hello Irfon, great to see you.
Great to see you, thanks for having me.
Great, right, so I'm going to dive straight into it. You are a serial entrepreneur and have founded two very successful businesses in cryptocurrency, one of which you've been running for about 6 years now, and that project is called Dovu. And as I gather, it's a tokenized marketplace for carbon dioxide. Could you tell me a little bit more about how it actually works and what led you to founding it?
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of a journey, really, Dovu. Actually, it started in 2015, and we took some seed investment in from Jaguar Land Rover. And the problem we were trying to solve, it was because we were trying to solve a different problem then. The problem was, how do we sort of create an ecosystem where you could communicate between autonomous vehicles, and sort of encourage behavior between these different sort of vehicles. In other words, a use case would be, how do you overtake when there isn't a driver? On the car in front and the car behind, who takes priority? How do you sort of reward for the fact that you've pulled over and the other car's taken over? So we started to build a business on blockchain and tokens and sort of tokenizing behavior traits, basically. But, the challenge there was, one, we were way too early. And number two, I didn't care enough, or the team didn't care enough about the problem, frankly. And, and that's a lesson there. Don't spend your life on something that you don't really sort of care about, because it's going to consume you. Do something that you have a passion for. So so we sort of sat down and sort of really took a look at, one, the technology that we were using, and also how could it be applied for something that we did care about. So first of all, the technology that we were using at the time was Ethereum, which wasn't sort of great as a sort of carbon footprint on the sort of planet. So we were taking a look at that and say, well, actually, are we proud of sort of building a business based on this technology as it currently was? And number two, the problem that we wanted to take a look at, that led us down the path really to take a look at the voluntary carbon market sector. How are people currently using carbon offsets, and what does that marketplace sort of look like? And that really, was a very enlightening sort of process when you sort of took a look at how currently the voluntary carbon marketplace was set up. And one of the words that kept, or a number of words that kept coming back, was sort of lack of trust, lack of transparency, a very opaque business models, and a whole range of other challenges, really, that made it not scalable. And one thing that building a blockchain business, if you're building something on the blockchain, what it's good for is actually ledgering, time stamping something and ledgering an activity. So, blockchain is a very obvious use case in the case of sort of the carbon markets, basically, because you can sort of audit right through in a public ledger, where that carbon has come from, where that carbon is now, and where that carbon went, basically. And it deals with the sort of double counting issue of, has that person or project sold that carbon more than once on multiple different sort of marketplaces and so on. So you could build trust up basically by having a public ledger, and that's what we sort of drilled down and started to examine more, and then we sort of focused in on carbon in nature-based projects, because yes, we need new technology to suck carbon out of the atmosphere if we can, but it's not here yet. Whereas we have technology, nature technology, basically,
trees.
that is, trees and soil and water and other things, that is actually there right now that can help, today. So we focused on nature-based carbon. And with my background as well, being a farmer's son from mid Wales, then I had some sort of, emotional involvement in that as well. So, that's what sort of led us there. It's been like every entrepreneur's journey, it never goes in a straight line. There are sort of lots of curves along the way, and Dover is a classic example of that.
Yeah, I can see. And that it leads me into my second question, which is a Greenpeace article, I think from November 2021, which was titled "Carbon Offsets Are a Scam." And I wonder then, is that because of this kind of double spending problem and it not being able to be audited? And do you see Dovu as kind of solving that problem and making it less scammy? What's your general thoughts on that?
I think those headlines are just sort of clickbait, really. I mean, you got to look at the science and everything that fits underneath it. It's like crypto is a scam. It's like the internet was a scam, and everything's a scam, as a headline, and then it elicits a response, and for sort of people who are looking for an excuse, sort of not to use them or get involved, and they don't go any further than the headline. They just go, that's it, and secondly, well, no, that's it. That's how it is. So I think that if you delve in a little further, I mean, what is a scam are companies that claim to be carbon neutral, when they're huge sort of polluters, and then they buy sort of junk offsets, basically, and there's a whole sort of history of that. There was a good article on Bloomberg a couple of days ago, which was sort of covering this and naming and shaming companies. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, where companies are sort of making statements that are just sort of don't hold up to scrutiny. The other bit of where it's, I won't say it's a scam, but where people lose trust in it is when companies are able to buy their way. A good example would be the World Cup that's going on at the moment. The probably worst sort of environmental event that we've ever had, other than wars. In the desert, air-conditioned stadiums, brand new stadiums being built. It's an absolute, outrage. And then they claim to be carbon neutral. So it's organizations that aren't reducing their own footprint first and sort of working hard to reduce the amount of carbon that they're emitting, but try to buy their way out of that. So first of all, carbon offsets are just a tool, and they should be used as a last resort. You should be reducing your carbon. You should be doing everything that you possibly can as an organization to emit as little as you can. But of course, in order to produce anything, you are going to be producing carbon. So the bit that's left, that you've tried everything that you can do to sort of to reduce, the bit that's left, you can then have an option to actually offset that in within a project that it actually has credibility. So, what exactly is that project doing to sequester carbon from the environment? Is it permanent? Is it temporary? Both of those are, great. Permanent's the best. If it's temporary, is it just buying us time before something better comes along? That's okay as well, because it's better than nothing. But basically, you really need to have a full knowledge of what that offset is, and trust and faith, in the project. And yeah, from Dovu's perspective, we ledger everything from the beginning of the project through to the redemption of the carbon. So, what methodologies have been used, who the third-party verifier was that verified the carbon that is now being sold. And then exactly whether that carbon is being offset or whether it's still a credit that's still live, which hasn't been redeemed, and where that is in the sort of system. So that's the important bit. But I mean, carbon offsets as a sort of way of buying your way out of bad behavior is a scam.
Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, as you say, once again, the headlines are always there to grab your attention. It's never that black and white, is it?
No, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, it's yeah, and it's good to be skeptical. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and you said there that as soon as you onboard a project, that their entire history and how the methodology is all stored. Is that then open for anyone to go and view, or would they have to contact you first?
No, it'll be available for the public so that you can take a look. I mean, we have it now on our marketplace, Dover.earth. You can sort of see some of the projects that are up there. You can see, and the information is sort of what I'd call, soft information, like sort of name of the farmers, where the farm is, what type of farming that they're doing, and then more detailed in terms of the methodology used to sort of count the carbon. No, everything should be public and everything should be made available for the buyer to make an informed decision. Having said that, we as an organization, we're targeting companies, not individuals. I think there's been too much put on the shoulders of individuals and not enough put on the shoulders of organizations. And I think so if we're going to make any substantial change, it's the companies that need to be changing their behavior and being more planet positive, basically, in their actions.
Interesting. And are you finding that even during this period now, as being in like a bear market in cryptocurrencies, do you still find clients coming to you outside of that looking for this service, or does it quieten down around now?
So Dovu's a sort of strange beast, really. We're not crypto at all. In other words, the way that it works is that once you upload a project to Dovu, we then mint a token, basically an NFT, which represents 1 ton of carbon. That NFT is it's as I say, it's non-fungible. It isn't something that's going to be traded, on Binance or Uniswap or anything like that. This is a ton of carbon that we then offer to corporates to purchase, and that ton of carbon then is as I say, either used as a credit or it's redeemed or offset. So we're definitely a blockchain business. We definitely use the sort of technologies and the innovations around non-fungible tokens to create a digital representation of the carbon that's in the ground or within the project. But we're not a classic sort of crypto company. So we're not affected by that, because the one thing that we do is sell carbon. And our job's not to sell tokens. Having said that, we do have a token, the Dove token. And that Dove token, the utility of that Dove token as we go forward will be in the governance of the project itself, and will be used within our sort of redemption process as well. So the Dove token has a utility within our marketplace, but it's not, we don't actively trade it. It's not a cryptocurrency. It's not there to replace fiat in any way. It's there as a utility within our ecosystem.
It's very interesting. It sounds like you have a very high utility to speculation ratio, unlike a lot of the other projects.
Well, I mean, it's what are you using the technology for? As I say, I think there are very, very few cryptocurrencies. In fact, I can only think of one main one, which was the first one, and then there's other ones that do other things. Like Ethereum is not a cryptocurrency. Ethereum is a a mechanism to pay for the services that you're sort of using on the Ethereum sort of protocol. It's not designed to be used to pop in and buy a cup of coffee in a coffee shop.
No.
So whereas obviously Bitcoin was intended to do that. Whether that's been successful or not is a massive debate. But that's the intention. So I think there's only one real cryptocurrency, and then the rest really there's some wannabes and pretend ones. And then there's the sort of ones that are actually delivering services and utility. So Ethereum delivers utility. We deliver utility within our ecosystem. And that's what the Dove token does.
It's a very interesting distinction, because I think most newcomers who do enter the space kind of look at it all and bundle everything together. So like, as you say, the latest FTX scandal, they're like, oh, this is bad. All of crypto is bad. Or like, this means Bitcoin is bad. Or like, Bitcoin uses energy. Everything else uses a lot of energy. Like, they're all, as you say, they're all different. And it seems that the others, as you say, are more currencies for a platform.
It's going back to that sort of where we started this off with, like offsets are a scam. It's a sort of lazy way of sort of covering it. And I'm pretty sure Greenpeace actually covered a lot of ground in that article, but somebody decided that was going to be the headline. And and it's the same really in sort of crypto. And so it's like I say, there really needs, we as an industry need to do a better job of describing and defining what it is that we actually do, and the different use cases. We've not done a great job of that.
No, well, I mean, it's difficult because, I mean, a lot of it, you need a base layer of understanding to even get your head around it in the first place. And so, as most people don't make that first effort to understand how one can be different from the other, tends to be quite a big step. You also mentioned the governance there, so of the token. So is your end goal to kind of step back slowly and allow the project to be more governed by the holders of the token, or do you think you'll always kind of remain a part and kind of you present options for voters of the tokens to vote on, but fundamentally you're the one coming up with, say, decisions or ideas?
I think that, I mean, that's an interesting question, because at the peak of the market a year ago, DAOs was sort of very hot. And I think that you should have, you could have called the top of the market when everybody thought DAOs were going to be run on good vibes, basically. It's going to be like, that was the sort of idea. You'd all join, it'd all be cool, and that would be great. And for me, governance is something that needs to be sort of earned really by a project. You have to have some core leadership in there, and then slowly sort of involve the community, because you've got to earn the right for that. And governance for me equals time. Forget the technology; it's someone's time that you're using up for them to sort of care enough to sort of participate in voting. And you can sort of look at it from a local perspective, whether that's your local town council, your local school hall, your village hall, the community, the committee. How many people are willing to sort of give up their evenings to join a committee or join the governing council of the school? Do you know what I mean? So it's the same for governance within any organization. You've got to earn the right and actually get your core group in place that sort of and then grow the community over a period of time. So ultimately I would love the community to be the sort of core function of Dovu, but it's going to take a very, very long time to do that. And I think it would be abdicating responsibility for something that is so important, to say, hey guys, look, we're all it's all over to you now. You sort it out. It's going to be a long time before that happens. But we do want more governance. We do want more, and governance may be the wrong word. We want more input, and we want sort of token holders who are using our token as a utility to have more say in some of the actions and activities that we participate in. And that could be such things as when we move away from nature-based carbon to other types of carbon. Should we be doing that? What carbon should we be involved in or not involved in, and actually just sort of get people to have a say.
I think you've articulated one of the biggest risks to DAO there beautifully well, in that, as you say, you shouldn't be able to buy leadership. It should be something you do earn with your own time and your own work and experience as well. If you have a system in which anyone can simply just buy in a big share and take it over, that can cause probably some pretty big major problems further down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's not decentralization. Then that's sort of that's the opposite, but just by another route.
It's almost like fiat.
Sort of, yeah, exactly. So and what's been happening is that people have been joining DAOs for, in lots of cases, purely for selfish reasons, on a transient basis. In other words, if I join that DAO, I'll get an airdrop, or I'll earn something from it. And as soon as they get the reward that they were looking for, then they're off to look for the next one. And it becomes really difficult. There are some good examples, where that hasn't happened, but very few.
Interesting. I want to kind of switch tack a bit and move over to your other project called Amplify, which you founded about 4 years ago. There are currently about 80,000 musicians using the platform. And could you possibly just give a little overview of how Amplify works and how you've managed to onboard so many musicians onto the platform?
Yeah, so Amplify is an interesting project. I mean, do you want me to give you the sort of background of how it started?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so
as long as it involves Jaguar.
It doesn't involve Jaguar this time. So, one of my oldest friends, Ian Matthews, who's the drummer in a band called Kasabian, we've been talking for years about doing something together, and we've had all sorts of crazy, ideas on crazy nights out, and we never really found anything. And then a chapel came up in my home village in the middle of Wales, Llynedid Wells, right next to the river Irfon, which I'm named after. And
nice.
It's a beautiful old chapel. It's been at the heart of the community for sort of 200 years. It's got a beautiful organ in there, balcony, fantastic, looks great. So it came up for auction, and the property developer was looking to buy it and try and get planning permission to turn it into flats. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. Let's not let that happen. So we purchased this chapel. And then we sat down and said, right, what are we going to do with it? It's sort of, I live in Bristol. It's sort of 2 hours from Bristol. It's 2 hours from anywhere, frankly, right in the heart, in the middle of Wales. And actually, I then sort of remembered something that David from Do Lectures and Hyatt sort of said to me, because he's a big inspiration for me, in terms of the Stoic sort of way of making the obstacle the thing. The obstacle is the answer, really. So this, so the idea then that the beauty of it is that this chapel is difficult to get to, and that should be the sort of business plan. And then we sort of expanded on that a little bit, and we thought, well, what if we sort of structured a 50-year business plan, and not the sort of short-term one? What does a music community or a cultural community look like 50 years from now? And will it, and the thinking then was, well, a music event is going to be in real life and in the metaverse, both at the same time. So this idea that you could get Beyonce singing in the chapel in Llynedid Wells to 300 people and to 300 million people at the same time. The chapel powered by this river, the water wheel, powering the energy and so on. That really intrigued us.
It's a beautiful image.
Yeah, and then why not? And also how can this chapel become part of the community? And sort of add value to the community as well, so it isn't just a sort of just sitting there as a venue. So we then then the pandemic hit, and when we were able to, myself and Ian would go for a walk and chat about things and say, right, what's the music economy look like for live musicians? Because most of our friends who are musicians were just struggling to make a living. In fact, they weren't making a living. It had dried up completely. So how can we sort of use new technology to sort of stop that happening? So we started to sort of riff on the idea of using decentralized finance and yield interest really to sort of look at the music economy and the business model for live entertainment. And I'll give you an example. If you're into live music, you buy a ticket, you go and see a gig. Sometimes you're buying a ticket 6 months, ahead of the gig, sometimes even longer. That money's left your bank account. It hasn't gone to the band. It hasn't gone to the venue. It's sitting somewhere delivering no value as a fan and delivering the artist zero value either. You then turn up at the gig, have a great gig, and then you go home. So we thought, well, that hasn't changed since forever, So what if you could put that ticket revenue into a decentralized finance contract, a trustless... I'll go back a little bit. And the other bit is for artists. Sometimes artists struggle to get paid. The promoter will say, the gig wasn't as successful as I thought it was. The money isn't there. We'll pay you later, all that sort of stuff. So you need trustless contracts. So this idea that you could actually deposit money in a decentralized finance sort of smart contract, stream yield into individual artists' wallets, whether that be each band member, the promoter, the manager, or whatever, in a trustless way. In other words, the smart contract was determining that money was going to be streamed to you, based on a condition. That smart contract would say, right, at the end of the gig, the next day you start earning. So we thought that was great. And then so the idea really is that you can build up value in this. If you're doing 100 gigs a year, for example, you can build up value in that sort of DeFi contract, and that you could ultimately start to earn a passive income for gigs that you did in the past. This idea that if there's another pandemic in X amount of years, you're still earning money off the gigs that you did previously. So we started a riff on that, and we then sort of built that front end, and we did a first gig in Lost Horizon, which is a venue in Bristol, and deposited the money in the smart contract, and it worked. And it was like, wow, this is cool. So at the same time, we were thinking, right, how do we expand our business, rapidly? So I knew a couple of lads who were running a business in Bristol called Amplify.link. So after a few conversations, we acquired them. And Amplify.link at that time was a link tree for musicians, for want of a better, for people who are familiar with Linktree. This sort of very easy and fast way for an artist to generate a landing page, customize it with their branding, and then drop in links to their Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, whatever, and to their events and merchandise and so on and so forth. At that time, it was a sort of freemium model. They had about 70,000 sort of musicians. No, actually probably closer to 80,000.
Yeah.
And delivering sort of links to, 25 million fans. And it was that freemium model where it was free, but if you wanted the extra services, you would then pay a monthly fee. So we acquired them and then made it totally free. So you didn't have to pay anything. And I think we're sitting now at nearly 100,000 musicians who are on there from around the world, delivering to maybe like 40 million fans. And what we then do is, I keep using the phrase earn the right. We then earn the right to sort of introduce these new models like that DeFi model, which we now call Amplify Live. So Amplify Live will be rolled out over the next few months, so that anybody will be able to set up their own gigs using this sort of DeFi model that we've created. So we earn the right to introduce new ideas and new thinking, with the ultimate aim of creating a real Web3 community between the artist and the fans. And what I mean by Web3 is we get out of the way, we disintermediate, really, so that there's a direct relationship between the fan and the artist. The artists own their own data in terms of the fan sort of engagement with that artist, and can offer directly sort of merchandise, ticketing, product, whatever they want to, which means that ultimately the artist should earn more money. and in fact will earn more money. But because our mission at Amplify is to enable more musicians to earn a living wage. That's the mission. And it came from the chapel. It's a long story, this, I know, apologies, but it came from the chapel.
Story, though.
It sort of spun it out from there, and but that's it's always been our mission, not to make Ed Sheeran more money, but to enable more musicians to earn a living wage. Because if we can do that, then they can stop stacking shelves in an evening and focus on their craft. They can really, and then for that, we'll get more art and more entertainment, and we all need that. And that's the sort of mission. And then going back, finally, just to finish off the story, the idea then, the head office of this company now is in the chapel in Llynartyd in Wales. So we're now going to start to recruit and build up knowledge jobs, within that little village in the middle of Wales. And ultimately, create an ecosystem around how you can re-energize this really old 200-year-old building and make it fit for purpose for the next 100 years, creating employment and adding value to the community that it's at the heart of.
It's an amazing mission. It's kind of like an all-in-one commercial front end for musicians, tied in with a bit of banking, based potentially passive income.
Yeah, I mean the key really is to make the language and the UX and UI, the sort of interface, sort of friendly for your target audience. Of course, that's the target for everybody to sort of do. And we were talking earlier about sort of the difficulty to get your head around what crypto is or crypto isn't, and frankly, nobody should care. There should be a service that is working behind the scenes that does a job that delivers value to the user, to your audience. I don't expect our musicians to learn about crypto. What I do expect them to sort of, for us to do, is to deliver value for them in a way that sort of is easy for them to engage with and use. And that's on us to do. That's not, there's too much of sort of expecting users to sort of educate themselves on certain tools, when actually you're not going to scale, to where we want to be, which is onboarding 1 million musicians into that platform. We're not going to scale unless we make it sort of really simple and easy, and sort of understandable.
And so are you working directly with venues then? If the ticket revenue goes directly to you first to then be put into to earn yield, are you then in partnership with venues, or is like how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we talk to venues and we've got good relationships with a number of them. And obviously with Ian and his sort of industry insight and connections, we've got fantastic relationships with labels and sort of big sort of promoters and so on. But that's really not where we're at. What's interesting, I mean, right now we have on Amplify a competition where you can win a gig in the metaverse. And, we've had sort of 2,500 entrants so far into that competition. One of our partners is a company called Condense, which I'd recommend everybody take a look at. But I mean, disclaimer, I am a shareholder as well. But so Condense is a great sort of volumetric video company where you can right now do a live gig and a metaverse gig at the same time. It sort of does real life capture. And so what that does, it's sort of, again, going back to our mission of making a living wage for musicians, our approach really isn't to go after sort of big venues or anything right now. It's to create, sort of environments to sort of enable the local pub that plays down, band that plays down the pub or the village hall or whatever else. They can set something up themselves. Using Amplify Live, they'll be able to go on there and set all of this up. Ticketing via NFTs, proof of gig, which these NFTs stay in people's sort of wallet. All these things will be facilitated by us. And yes, we will, of course, expand into sort of larger venues and partner with other organizations. But it's quite interesting. The metaverse thing is really interesting. I mean, because going back to our Beyonce and in the sort of chapel, suddenly this idea that you can create a venue out of nothing. Literally, you could be in somebody's living room and do a gig and have, a few hundred people watch you, within the metaverse as well. So the definition of what a venue is sort of changing, and it needs to change because venues are under massive threat right now, for all sorts of reasons, not only because of the cost of living crisis and energy crisis, but also noise pollution, because these venues are sitting within sort of urban environments, and all it takes is 2 or 3 complaints, and they're under threat straight away. So they're under a huge pressure, music venues. We want to do what we can to help them, but also we need to sort of look at ways that musicians can view other types of venues in order to protect their interests.
Are you seeing much demand for that kind of event held in the metaverse as opposed to being in person?
I think there's a sort of an interest. I think that in reality, the metaverse gigs that I've seen so far have been absolute rubbish. I think the user experience is not great, and whether it's a sort of 2-dimensional sort of stream of a band that is dropped into quite clunkily, and a lot of the times into some sort of metaverse, or whether it's sort of like a Travis Scott who did a big gig in the metaverse on Fortnite, which is the one that's cited a lot because it raised a lot of money, but that cost a lot of money, and it was an animation of Travis Scott doing the gig, and I think it made him like $20 million in an hour and a half selling digital merchandise, really. But that cost a lot of money to sort of put on. So, and I don't know whether a pre-recorded animation is well, that's not the sort of gigs we're talking about. We're talking about gigs which are sort of in real life and in the metaverse happening at the same time. So you could message your mate who's actually at the gig itself whilst you're watching it at home and say, "Wow, isn't this fantastic?" So I think there's a lot of interest. And again, I'll sort of big up Condense. Every Thursday they do an in-metaverse gig. So if you check them out, you can go and join that gig every Thursday at 6:00. That's showing a sort of good example of where we are with the technology and what a metaverse gig can look like, alongside an in real life gig. So I think we're early, and horrible term because everything's early in this space, but it's moving fast. I think in 6 months' time we're going to see a lot of these type of events happening.
Interesting. And so, is there an amplified token as well, and what is that used for?
We haven't got the token yet. We've just launched our sort of a light paper on what we think the token can be. But yeah, I mean, the token, we're not going to do a token sale. There's no retail event. You can't buy it.
Nice.
So, the token is really going to be only available to artists that are on Amplify platform. So they'll be able to claim their tokens, and then they'll be able to use those tokens, to access the services within our platform, but also use them to incentivize their fans to sort of help grow their community themselves and grow their audience and sort of do stuff that sort of fans want to do. And then, of course, in the wallet itself, then, the fans that are doing that the artist will be able to see which fans are owning the most sort of tokens that, linked to them, and then therefore offer sort of unique packages to them, such as meet and greet at the next gigs or sort of, unique content.
Interesting. And the yields as well then. What kind of assets are you parking the money into in order for them to earn a yield? Is it strictly crypto based, or could it be, say, government bonds as well potentially? Because I think those are in this period now are, I think, even higher than a lot of the yields on things like Maker and Aave and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, yeah, there's definitely been a change. It is you earn more by putting it in your building society, definitely, than sort of staking it. But no, it'll be crypto. It'll be staked in DeFi contracts, specifically stable coins. So it's going to be low risk sort of yield, certainly to start with, because there's no there's no reason to increase the risk, for a community that's already in a sort of precarious sort of place. So you want to make it as low risk as possible. Of course, as it matures, you can offer different sort of options, and different sort of risk thresholds, or that can be done. But to start with, no, it's got to be stablecoin, and yeah, I mean, and it's part of this, because it's also part of this sort of trustless contract, which is just as important. The yield is really important, but the trustless contract is really important as well for musicians. So in 2 years' time, if they've fallen out with their manager, or if the bass player's fallen out with the lead singer or whatever, each individual is still earning from that sort of that gig, and there's nothing that any one individual can do to sort of change that, because it's sort of it's secured by that smart contract.
Interesting. And another question as well. I think, like, quite often, especially seen today, fairly big figures being deplatformed from certain platforms. Would you ever deplatform an artist for something they've done, or do you kind of stay out of that and kind of take a seat back on those kind of more political affairs?
Gosh, that's a question. Yeah, thanks for that one. It's sort of never. It's we don't go. I mean, we don't read or get involved with. It's not a social media account. Okay, no. So it's not a social media platform. I have no idea what individual band members are talking about at any one time. So from that perspective, no, I can't see us ever being involved. We don't read messages. It's not our data. It's so there's no way of us sort of ever knowing what that one band is sort of represents, or each individual band member represents. So I don't see that as something that we will be getting involved in.
Good answer. And can you ever see something like this replacing Spotify? Like, would you offer direct streaming through a maybe more fan-based Amplify app? Is that something that you would look towards?
No. I think there are lots of companies that are looking to address that and failing, frankly. I think that the music industry right now supports Spotify. They have a vested interest in doing that. All the big labels, are involved in it, and it works for them. It's delivering them huge sort of value. I think that there are lots of grassroots sort of alternatives that sort of pop up. And, will they ever be able to replace Spotify without major label support? I can't see that sort of happening in reality. So I think that what there needs to be is lots of different options. And this is where Web3 plays its role. If there are tools and services out there that sort of can create these direct relationships between the fans and the artists don't need to have as many fans in order to earn a living wage. So, it's really taking a look at sort of, the services and the tools that are there to sort of facilitate these sort of commercial relationships. I mean, there's some good examples of bands that are still touring, don't have a major record label, can sell out sort of 2,000 seater sort of gigs or less. I mean, the Levelers is a good example of a band that has been going for many, many years, very core sort of fan base, and have earned a living, and earn a living sort of doing that and delivering sort of, joy and value to their sort of fan base. And I think that, if you can do more bands sort of like that can enable them via Web3 to build up this sort of fan base and directly sort of benefit from every record that's sold, or every vinyl or every stream or whatever, then great. I think Spotify, frankly, will always have a role. It'll be streaming radio, frankly, for on-demand radio.
Interesting. It's kind of like you only need 1,000 true hardcore fans to earn your living, and in this almost with the added applications gives more channels for the fans for those 1,000 true fans potentially connect with and interact with the band itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you talk to musicians and you say, like, not many of them say, look, we want to be huge. We want to be Ed Sheeran. We want to be massive. Most of them want their music to be heard, absolutely, but they want to do this for the rest of their lives, and I think it's facilitating that, and that's why the mission of Amplify is to enable more musicians to earn a living wage, because that'll enable them to do it for the rest of their lives.
Are you finding more musicians are being able to earn more than they would normally be able to make outside of Amplify?
I think it's too early to say yet, frankly. I think that, the great thing about, excuse me, headphones just falling out. The great thing about musicians is that each musician probably knows another 20 musicians, and if you can deliver something that is demonstrably sort of earning them more money if they use these tools or these services, the 100,000 musicians that we've got right now on our platform will very quickly ramp up to
10, 20
to a lot more. And it's our job really over the next 6 months to demonstrate, in very real terms, the value of being on the platform and the fact that we're delivering on our mission, that we are enabling more people to earn a living wage. But the only thing I would say on that is that Amplify used to be a monthly paid for service, and it isn't now. So that in itself has prevented sort of musicians having to pay roughly £1 million to sort of to have this sort of service. So already we're delivering on our promise of putting more money back in the musicians because they can use this service to build their fan base and not pay for it.
How are you able to offer it for free?
Because our revenue model is more around the value that we deliver outside of the subscription. So the Amplify Live, for example, so we'll be taking a percentage of the yield for every gig. So we'll earn money from Amplify Live. We'll be taking a cut of anything like NFTs and stuff like that that's sold on the platform. So it's really about us taking a little bit of the value that we're delivering as opposed to us taking an upfront fee to join the platform to try to get you to build value. So, here's all these free marketing tools, use them. And once you start to deliver value, we'll take a cut of it from there.
Nice. It's kind of like if you become a success, then you can pay us something. But until then you can kind of just keep working on it, really.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've got a Discord as well. So we're trying to actively encourage people who use an Amplify Live, the musicians, to actually, Amplify, to join Discord and sort of get involved in discussions on there. So take this relatively passive user base because they're using the tools. They may only use them once a month as they add different links on and so on. But actually join the community and sort of contribute, best practices and how do you grow an audience and so on. So that's a work in progress. And I think we've got about 2,000 to 2,100 on Discord right now, which is fine because it's organic growth. It's actual people from our community. It's not people jumping into Discord to wait for some sort of token drop or whatever, because you're not going to get it unless you're a member of Amplify.
Interesting. I'm gonna change tack a little bit again. Before you entered crypto, you founded a video advertising company called Cool. You raised over 21 million and you opened offices in New York and San Francisco. What did you learn the most from founding and growing such a big company?
Wow, that was what did I learn the most? Choose your investors very carefully is what I learned the most, because I think that's the without a doubt the thing. I think the biggest learning curve there is that we went through a very a long period of zero growth or very little growth within that company. And then we went from like 0 to 20 million in a year, pretty much, in terms of revenue. And it's very, very difficult to sort of be prepared for that and to sort of put the infrastructure and the team in to sort of deal with that. And then there were changes in the industry, which meant that the revenue dropped very significantly afterwards as well. So there was a real roller coaster ride of development within that business. And yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about myself really within that, as much as anything else, or probably more than anything else. And that is that you need to have a very strong team around you in order to sort of deal with the sort of ups and downs of that, of what happened at that sort of business. And we didn't really have that. I hadn't put in place, the right team to sort of deal with that. And that was totally on me and not on anyone else. So, I mean, the raising the money was a very strange sort of process as well, because we sort of raised a lot of money through angels, and we got heavily diluted. The founders, I got heavily diluted through that sort of process, because there was that process where we were not growing as fast as we could, so we were having to raise capital in order to stay in the business, and ultimately I lost control over the board and over the running of that company. So again, that's why
must have been tough.
That's why, it's a very difficult sort of process, and it's a steep learning curve, and that's why I say you need to sort of, the only advice I would give on that is choose your investors carefully, and ones that are going to be sort of friends for the road, basically, because it's like a marriage. When you've got investors, they're with you, and you're going to have to sort of work out your relationships.
It must be quite hard to do as well, because especially when you're not making much money and you're not growing much, you're just kind of looking for anyone to give you some money. But as you say, it's probably important to remind yourself you still have to be somewhat picky, even though you might feel like a beggar.
Very hard. It's very hard to do. It's really hard to do. And I mean, because in reality, you're right. I mean, when you're needing the money and somebody comes there and offers it to you, then you go, oh, thank goodness, that buys us more time to sort of to do what we need to do, But there's a sting in the tail, if you just choose the wrong investors.
Short-term pain, long-term gain. I'm going to ask two more questions before we wrap up. The first of which is, you are a partner at Outlier Ventures, a VC fund that invests in Web3 infrastructure and companies. Where do you see the biggest opportunity in the whole space moving forward?
Well, at Outlier, the mission is to sort of invest in companies that are going to onboard the next 1 billion users into the open metaverse. That's the mission, and that's what we look for when we make sort of decisions. Outlier have a very large team, roughly sort of 100 people, I think, right now. Wow. And what they do is they guide sort of early stage businesses through to sort of the get them ready for the next event, whether that be a token event or whether that be an equity raise or whatever. So there's a lot of value add that Outlier sort of build on, to the sort of onto the founders really, and to the sort of journey. But that's the mission, and I think that's where the opportunity sits. How do we build this open metaverse? How do we build this sort of compete against this sort of the Meta Facebook version of what they think the metaverse is, which is sort of closed, far more of a closed sort of environment, and extractive when it comes to fees, for things traded within it and so on. So yeah, I think that's where the opportunity is, this sort of open metaverse. And for that, there are some building blocks that are needed. There is digital identity. There is, sort of data portability. There are standards around sort of, as I say, moving avatars between different games and so on. So there's lots of sort of, infrastructure still needed in order to make that make that happen. So I think up until, so we need to be investing in companies that are doing that and looking at sort of doing that. There's a really good company as part of the portfolio, which is a company called Biconomy, that that creates gasless fees, so that actually the end user doesn't need to own any crypto in order to sort of buy NFTs or store them or trade them. So lots of infrastructure sort of projects that have been built, and then some sort of really cool sort of new fashion metaverse projects, and music and so on. And they are investors in Amplify as well. So Amplify is a typical company that Outlier would want to sort of get involved in.
Yeah, you mentioned the word metaverse there a lot, and I wondered what do you say to kind of general public who seem to have a very negative view of it, or a view that it's kind of way unrealistic, like millions of years into the future, like why bother thinking about it now? What do you say to them?
I'd say unless you're involved in the business itself, then I wouldn't waste any time thinking about it. I think unless you're
wait for it to be built.
Well, I always sort of look at things and go, well, why should anybody wait? They've got all the other worries in the world. Why should they care about what the metaverse is right now? Unless you're actually involved in building it. If you're a marketeer, absolutely, should I be looking at spending money in it? Is there an audience? Is there, how do we get involved in that? Yeah, if you're into marketing, especially sort of big brands, you should definitely be taking a look at it to see what you can learn from it. But to the general community, just get on with your life and not worry about it. It's like, come on, there's other things to be concerned about. And it's beholden upon us who are building within it to deliver a service and a solution and an experience where the general community go, oh wow, yeah, I love this. And not even call it a metaverse. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just it's an experience that's been delivered that people are enjoying, and I think demographics plays a big part of it. If you take a look at sort of 16-year-olds and under, they're spending a lot of time on video games right now, and their social activity is within video games, and their sort of friends are there within the game themselves, as they're sort of playing it. They spend more time on social engagement. I think the stats are within video games than they do within social media. And so again, you're seeing this sort of idea of engaging in a metaverse already sort of happening, with the certain generations. But it's beholden upon us to deliver something that's cool.
It's interesting you say that, because the last podcast I was recording was with a guy called Jason Dean, who's basically was trying to drive adoption on the internet before anyone was really using the internet. And he kind of said, like, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter what people thought. I mean, there was a lot of pushback, people saying, like, really bad for the environment, like, throw another lump of coal in the fire because someone just ordered another book of Amazon. And it kind of doesn't really matter what your opinions are. Once the infrastructure has been built and it's there, if you complete your mission, then people will kind of just start using it anyway, and you won't really need to worry about what metaverse is, whether it's important or whether you should even really care about it.
Exactly. I think intellectually, if people want to engage in the conversation, I think it's a really, interesting conversation to be had, but I've never engaged in a conversation with someone who's come at it with a positive mindset when they say, tell me about the metaverse, isn't it a load of shit? That's how it normally starts. There's nobody starts a conversation going, wow, isn't the metaverse amazing? It's going to be really great. It's always, it's the same with carbon offsetting. It's the same with crypto. It's the same with blockchain. It's
anything
the same
new.
with everything. Everything starts with this preconception of negativity, that's there. And then you've got to decide as an individual, whether you want to engage in that conversation or not. But I normally do the same answer. Because, are you involved in the business? No. Well, let's wait and see.
Let's talk about the World Cup or something.
Well, we can talk about carbon. We can talk about the planet. Absolutely. That's a far more important thing to be talking about, and than worrying whether the metaverse is going to be real or a scam, sort of 10 years from now.
Yeah. Interesting. And so before we part, one last question I want to ask. What mindset do you find most helpful during times like this? Because, there's a lot of people who have probably got in 2021 peak, or people are building and are now finding it hard to raise money or continue building. What mindset do you find is most useful to kind of get you through this period before we enter the kind of the next part of the cycle?
I think the key really is why are you here, right? So the first mindset is why are you here, So, and it's like every sort of gold rush, really. You've got the sort of people who come to it for the reasons, of making money, and it was seen as a gold rush, So people turn up and they create a business or have an idea, but really, but it's there to quickly, make cash, and they're the ones that are going to struggle, or without a doubt. And so the key really is, why are you using the technology that we're trying to build, the blockchain, the wallet, self-custody, all that sort of stuff, data portability and all of that. Do you believe in it? Number one, are you converted, or are you a tourist? Sort of, are you here because it was just sort of cool and you could make money? So the first thing is, why are you in it? And actually, if you can answer that honestly to yourself, and it's a sort of I call it a mirror test. You're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're sort of asking yourself that question. Then the rest of it sort of answers itself. In other words, you
stop worrying about the question.
Yeah, because the price is the price comes and goes, and it goes up and down, and there are criminals in the system, as there are in every system, whether it's sort of traditional banking, or whether it's sort of medical, sort of raising money for some
building
sort of
houses,
super thing. There's criminals everywhere, So all of that is horrible, absolutely, But ask yourself that question as to why you're here, what you're doing it for. Do you believe in it? Do you think it's worth spending years of your life, that you'll never get back? Because that's the only currency that's important, really, is the time. Is it worth spending your time doing? And then the rest of this noise around you sort of quietens down, and you just get your head down. And you're more likely to get investment if you're truly convicted, sort of convinced, not convicted, talking about criminals, truly convinced, about sort of what it is that you're trying to build.
Great answer. That's, I think, really useful for a lot of people. Anyway, we've just come to the hour. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Irfon. I really look forward to seeing you at CowShed. For anyone who doesn't know, he will be there and he will be moderating. So if people want to hear more from you, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's easy with my name. You can just Google Irfon. You'll either find a river or me. I'm not the river. So it's you can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Irfon.eth. But yeah, just Google them. That isn't some sort of ego play. Just Google them and you'll play. It's just I've just been lucky enough to be sort of named Irfon, which is
first human.
Many of us around. Yeah, absolutely, and get in touch. Love to chat to people, and I'm really looking forward to the event. It's going to be cool.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Irfon. Have a great rest of your
day.
All right,
thanks for having me.
See you.
Right, cheers, man. Take care. Bye.
A quick reminder that we are holding a blockchain retreat on the 11th to the 14th of May, where you will find a sauna with a view of the sea, yoga, breathwork, fresh food, sea swims, live music, and of course, talks, panels and workshops all about the future of both Bitcoin and crypto. There are a limited number of spaces, so make sure to head over to our website at cowshed.org.uk, where you can register for interest so that you'll be notified when tickets go live. In addition, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, as we will have a new one for you next week with a very special journalist from Cointelegraph. Happy New Year!